Welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on another glorious week in the state of Texas. This is the second episode of our Texas Values Report this week. This is a special segment because we've had so many things happening on this issue, the issue of women's privacy, that we had an opportunity to have two guests this week. And with, halfway through the session, the clock is starting to tick a little bit louder on getting good things passed. We wanted to bring some updated information. And if you didn't see yesterday's special segment, which was from the Capitol, a little bit different background, not as clean as polished as this one, but sometimes, the work has to take the priority and not always the way things look on camera. So we had a great conversation yesterday with Brooke Slusser, who is a NCAA female athlete. She's a collegiate athlete at San Jose State University. She's one of their volleyball players, but she is from the state of Texas. Went to high school in Denton Guyer, and was at the University of Alabama briefly, and then over to San Jose State. She was also talking about the women's privacy issue. So if you missed that segment, that episode yesterday, it's on social media. We'll try to get it on our website, all the platforms, and so on. If you're watching this on YouTube, click that subscribe button, like it. We want to, increase our algorithms or whatever makes, possible for more people to see our work. So please do that and stay tuned every week to the work that we do. If you're new to the show, we talk about the issues of faith, family, and freedom in the arenas of the courts, the legislature, and the media. And today we've got a guest who's on for the first time, but her timing is perfect because she has a personal connection to a huge issue that we've been working on, a very concerning issue, an issue of safety, an issue, really of protection and privacy. Claire Frugia, I think I said it the right way. It's going to be our guest today on the Texas Values Report. She is a legislator staffer for Representative Andy Hopper, who's in his first session. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about this in just a minute. But you might have heard about this about a month or so ago when the story broke that a Capitol staffer was startled, was shocked, was surprised by having a man in her women's bathroom. And it turns out this is the first time it's happened, and we're hearing more and more of these reports, sadly. But she was brave enough to bring this to the attention of the legislator that she's working for, Representative Andy Hopper, and then also brought it to our attention. And we've been able, look, we'll talk more about this in a minute, but now there's actually a clear policy at the Capitol, but we know these things could happen in other parts of the state, so we don't want to just stop there. Claire, welcome to the Texas Values Report.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to see you again. I know you spent some time with us at our Texas Faith and Family Day earlier this month. I believe on March 6th. Your representative, your boss was there too, got to talk a lot about this issue of the circumstances, right? The situation of where you were in the women's bathroom in the state capitol, of all places where we would think, there'd be a lot of people realizing that we got to follow the rules. The sign says women, it doesn't say men. There should be no confusion. However, that was not the case. Before we talk a little bit about that situation, I want you to share with our audience a little bit about yourself. We were talking food before we got on the air, but tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up working at the Texas Capitol.
Okay, well, I'm originally from Oregon, and when I lived in Oregon, I grew up with Mr. Hopper's district director. We lived very close to each other, and about 3 years ago, she moved to Texas and got really interested in politics. And I worked in politics throughout high school as well. And so when it came up that they needed extra staff for this session, my friend reached out to me and I interviewed for the position and they accepted me. So that's how I got to Austin. I'm really only planning to be here for this session. So, but I've really enjoyed it so far. Everyone's been really great to work with. It's been really fun getting to know all the true conservatives here. And it's just been a really fun time. Been a lot of stuff thrown at me, but it's been really fun.
Well, we're glad to have you. And, look, being involved in important work in the state of Texas sometimes is at a larger scale, a bigger, audience or platform than maybe other states. And that's not, to get into a debate about what state's better than the others. It's just a reality. We have the 8th largest economy in the world. A lot of people paying more attention to things that are happening in Texas. But part of the reason they pay attention is this expectation that we're going to, we care about certain values and certain principles and certain expectations, about how things are going to go. And one of those is when it relates to issues like this, when you go into the bathroom, a private area in our state capitol, young ladies like yourself would expect that their privacy would be protected, and they wouldn't have a man coming into that bathroom, or a man that is dressed up as a woman trying to convince people that
Yep.
he's a woman and be surprised by that. But that's exactly what happened to you. I know we put a great video together about this, but give us a little bit of details of what happened in that circumstance.
Okay, well, I was using the restroom and I had walked out and it had like our staff bathroom has a hallway basically where there's a mirror at the end of it. So I was kind of adjusting my clothes, making sure I looked presentable, everything was buttoned and zipped, and I was ready to go back into the office. And I see this person approaching me from behind, and I mean I thought it was a woman. I couldn't see his face at all. And so I kind of moved out of the way in the mirror, and then I hear a man's voice compliment my hair. And I was taken aback and I turned around and it was a man. And it was unfortunately fairly obvious that it was a man. And he was at the sink washing his hands. And we ended up having a conversation like about hair growth and different serums that will help your hair basically. And then at the end of the conversation, I accidentally called him sir and I ran out of the bathroom basically. And so and it just
Well,
shows like how instinctual.
yeah, when
Yeah.
but hang on a second, Claire. You said you accidentally. I mean, I think you were about to say the word instinctively. I mean, that was your natural reaction because
Yeah.
it certainly appeared to you this was a man.
Yeah, I mean, it was instinctual for me to call him sir, but I didn't mean to in the moment because I didn't want to start a kerfluffle.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you weren't.
I didn't mean to in the moment, but
It wasn't as if you were doing that really to sort of poke at him in some ways, but
Mhm.
I mean, I just see that's sort of the natural reaction, and without putting
Absolutely.
a lot of thought to it. It's troubling too because I have a 15-year-old daughter. There are student groups that come to the Capitol all the time, right? And
Hmm.
3, 4, maybe 5, 6 years ago, it never dawned on me to think about, hey, y'all be careful when you go in the bathroom to the young ladies. You really don't see this that much in the men's restroom, but there's, in the women's restroom, you're seeing it more and more. And it's almost as if, some people have called it a fetish. It's become a joke. It's become a game.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's ridiculous what we're seeing. These men are posting these videos on social media, parading around in the women's bathroom, really, just I think, trying to suggest to people that there's nothing wrong with it, and they're going to do it whether we like it or not, right? And they know that
Oh,
it's bothering women when they do it.
yeah. Well, I heard this really sad story yesterday that a man told me, and he has this kind of this ritual where he comes in with a bunch of signs that are controversial, like against abortion, how we need to pray to end abortion, and he said that a woman came up to him, I think it was a few weeks ago, crying, and she had a little girl with her that was also crying. And it was because they had used the public restroom. They went in there, and there was a man that was very tall, wearing a dress, that was very imposing. And that mother told him, "You should not be in here around my children." And he just looked at her and said, "Ma'am, you shouldn't be around your children."
Yeah, that
And so,
and this is what some people are trying to do. They're trying
yeah.
to, change the rules, break down people's normal reactions and instincts, and suggest that it's no different. Whoever wants to go into it. And here's the part of the problem. I mean, that's a problem in and of itself, but we know that there are people that prey on young girls and kids that are going to use this, dropping of the guard, everyone saying, oh, maybe I shouldn't say anything because if I say something, now I'm going to be the one that, that gets in trouble or looks bad because, someone got their feelings hurt or, they try to make more of an issue of that than the fact that that man's not supposed to be in the woman's bathroom to begin with. And so when no
Mhm.
one says anything, when everyone is, not trusting their instincts, that's when there's not this natural protection. And these men will go into these bathrooms and they will abuse kids. They'll harm kids. They'll take advantage of them. And we've seen incidents of that happening. Now, you brought this to your elected officials' attention, Representative Andy Hopper. And, we've been getting to know him, pretty well over the past couple of years. It sounded like he didn't hesitate to spring into action and try to get something done.
Yeah, absolutely. He was absolutely wonderful to work with. He honestly initially was more mad than I was. I mean, I had that gut feeling that something was wrong, and I felt extremely uncomfortable and unsafe, but I kind of was like, okay, well, this is just another obstacle. And he was the one that really protected me and defended me and said, no, this is wrong. You should not feel this way with a biological male in your restroom. And so he stood up for me. Our chief of staff stood up for me. They really encouraged me when I needed encouragement. And I think a big mantra of the people that are pushing that males should be in females' restrooms, try to emotionally manipulate you
Yeah.
and make when you feel uncomfortable, they make the other person look like the victim. And that's kind of what they were doing to me. And that's what they're still doing right now. And I'm just so thankful for the masculine men that are standing up for me and protecting me so much more than the liars who call themselves women's right activists.
Well, I appreciate you saying that too, because
Mhm.
and I talk to my sons about this, that there's this expectation, this natural instinct, but it's almost as if you've got to teach it a little bit more these days because there's
Mhm.
been pushback from people by the left or whatever and trying to confuse men about what our role is. And that doesn't mean, that we're more important or valuable than women. That just means in certain circumstances when it becomes a little bit more important that men do protect people that are younger, children, women at times, young girls at times, right? I want
Absolutely.
other men to be concerned that my daughter's dad may be watching, right? And
Yeah.
and I don't know how to describe it, but I just think we all know instinctively that when a young girl is walking by herself or walks into a restroom or a vulnerable place, if her dad's nearby or some man that is full size like I am, and I'm not the biggest or tallest guy, but I'm obviously a grown man, that I might do
Mhm.
something about it. I think, typically, and it's interesting. I pick up on this from my own daughter as she gets a little bit older. And so we want young men, older men, boys, we want them to trust that instinct. And sometimes it's really necessary, right? And so it's interesting to hear you, acknowledge that, and also for Representative Hopper to realize, particularly as a member of the legislature, that he has an important role and bring it to the right people's attention. Now, it took a little while, but finally the State Preservation Board has come out with a policy. Our lieutenant governor spoke up about this issue and concern about what was happening. And then now there's a law that's going through the legislative process to protect people like yourself and other people so this doesn't happen. And that there's a law that's out there that's clear. Hey, this is how it works. So people can't try to use the excuse that we didn't know or we were confused, but that law gives them some backup as well. And Governor Abbott has posted on social media his support of Valerie Swanson's bill, House Bill 239, and also Senate Bill 240. And that would apply and protect women and young girls in these circumstances, not just in the Capitol, but in any government building statewide. I know that's something that you've talked a little bit about, and you're starting to learn. I mean, the legislative process, it might be 5 months, but it doesn't actually last that long. So we still have an opportunity to get something done, but then we got to wait 2 years. So really, the time is now to do this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's really important for girls that don't have someone backing them up to have a policy and a law that's set in stone that gives validity to their statements. And so that's why passing these bills are so important. I think it will spark a huge change, especially to young girls that feel uncomfortable with this and they don't really have someone that can help them, but they'll have the government to kind of have their back and make sure that their spaces are protected. And I think that women are targeted in this because we're naturally very emotional creatures, and that's part of the beauty of being a woman. And I think that like we had a representative that was kind of emotionally manipulating me, trying to get me to empathize and trying to kind of coerce me into being comfortable with having a male in my private space. And I'm naturally inclined to feel empathy, but
Sure.
that is objectively wrong.
Well, and I think what how that comes across, we're talking with Claire Frugia, and she is a Capitol staffer in Texas. And in the state capitol, a man entered her women's restroom. She was surprised, startled. She sort of instinctively called this man that was dressed as a woman, sir, and had a brief conversation. And really was in the moment, trying to figure out what she was supposed to do, and surprised by the moment. And later, really, was concerned about it because of the way that certain people reacted. But it really highlighted the fact of, if this can happen at our state capitol, it can happen anywhere in the state where people are not expecting it. And if we don't do something about it, it suggests to people that there's nothing wrong with it, and that means we're going to see more of it, which would be tragic, in my opinion. So we're trying to get a handle on this. Some other cities like Odessa have passed policies to make sure this isn't happening in government spaces, and not only bathrooms, right? Think about this, Claire. These locker rooms, these showers, a swimming pool, right? A community swimming pool, city pools. There's still a lot of those out there where you're going to have young ladies that are undressing, or maybe have to undress just to use the bathroom if they're in a swimsuit, and they can find themselves in those situations. You might have an athletic team that travels from out of the state and they come into Texas and try to act like they don't know what the laws are here in those competitive settings and locker rooms. Brooke Slusher was talking about that yesterday on the show. And so
That's a really good point.
There's a lot of other places, right? I mean, you think about the bathroom, the restrooms are important, but this law that we're working on and these circumstances, have come up in other situations where, try to think of a polite way to say it, where, women's bodies are more exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those can be even, just as critical for us to address. I mean, can you imagine that if there was a situation where you were, say you work out in the morning and you come to the Capitol and you're allowed to use a shower or a locker room and this guy came in there, I'm sure that would have been even more troubling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, women's spaces, sometimes it's necessary to be in a state of undress for different situations, and it's absolutely necessary that we protect these spaces because, I mean, when I was younger, I was uncomfortable even being in a state of undress in front of ladies. I was
Sure.
extremely uncomfortable with that, and just the fact that a man could be in there is absolutely atrocious and should not even be a possibility here. And that's why I'm really excited about Ms. Swanson and Senator Middleton's bills. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they'll work on the floor and in committee.
Well, we are too. And, we've got some work to do on that. The House Bill 239 has over 77 co-authors, which means we've already got the number of votes to get it passed. We had a meeting with the Calendars Committee Chairman, Todd Hunter. He said he's good with it. He said, tell people, Chairman Hunter said he's good with the bill and, there's no reason why it shouldn't get passed. And that once it comes out of Calendars Committee, he's going to sign on as a co-author. So we just got to get Chairman Ken King to schedule that bill for a hearing in the House so we can get moving. Got to get Senate State Affairs to schedule a hearing in the Senate where Senator Middleton has there. Chairman Brian Hughes get both those bills moving so we've got a chance to get that done. We know people are going to come out against it, unfortunately, but we know we've had more strength and support on this issue than ever. And we've got your example, sadly, and others that remind us that the time is now to get something done. We appreciate your courage. I can just see growth in you over the past 3 or 4 weeks. After we first met you, you sort of getting thrust in the middle of all this, but having the confidence and courage to step forward. And obviously a lot of that has to do with you being the legislative director and having the support of your boss, State Representative Andy Hopper, who's been fantastic. It did not hesitate at all to be a leader on this issue. So we thank you for all that you continue to do. And Claire Frugia has been a very courageous woman over the past 2 months, and she's also been our guest today on the Texas Values Report. Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and all of your staff. They're great.
All right. Well, we'll let Claire exit the Zoom room here, and I've got a couple of closing comments I want to share about some big issues. Real quick, big event out in Fort Worth, Tarrant County area legislative update and benefit dinner is going to be on May 10th. Dr. Eitan Heim, this is the whistleblower who just about ended up in jail for 10 years because the Biden Department of Justice really wanted to seek retribution, in my opinion, sort of retaliation, because he spoke the truth when Texas Children's Hospital was lying to the public and elected officials about not engaging in sex change procedures on kids. All that's been stopped now, but when it first broke 2-3 years ago, this was a big deal because these hospitals were acting like they weren't doing these things. Turns out they were. And Dr. Heim was a resident at the time. He was in his residency working to become a surgeon, which he is now. But the Department of Justice under the Biden administration came after him, indicted him, was trying to put him in jail for 10 years. He had already gone through a couple of different steps of the criminal process. There were threats that he was going to end up in jail the week after President Trump was sworn into office. We communicated with some of our friends. Other people were doing the same. And thankfully, on a Friday afternoon, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, once the Department of Justice settled in under the Trump administration, a motion was filed to drop the charges, the criminal charges against Dr. Heim, and they were, and he was a free man, which is incredible. But he's going to come speak in Fort Worth. You got to hear him tell the story, okay? I'm just giving you a little snippet of it, but he's going to be there and talk about what it was like to go through that, what it was like to stand his ground and to survive. It went on for like 2 years or so, but also the importance of that. The importance of what do we do now and also moving forward, and why it's important to protect whistleblowers like him and others. Tim O'Hare, the Tarrant County judge, is going to be our MC out there at Fort Worth at the Worthington Hotel. We did an event there 2 years ago with Riley Gaines. It was fantastic. Great setup, great venue, and we know a lot of people are going to be excited. This is on a Saturday night, so we're hoping some elected officials will be back in town, so we're not going to disrupt anything on the legislative calendar, but also it will not disrupt anything for our team, so many of us can be there in Fort Worth on a Saturday night, so we hope you're there too. And we are going to announce a few other key people that are going to be a part of that event, so look forward to that. And it's not going to be a huge event. We're only going to have a limited amount of seats, so put this save the date on your calendar. We're going to put a ticket link up pretty soon so you can get registered for that. But go ahead and send us an email if you want. Tell us if you want to make it to that event. It's going to be absolutely extraordinary. We're going to update you about where we are in some key bills with about 2 to about 3 weeks left in the process at that point. But one of the greatest opportunities for you to make a difference-making financial commitment, a donation to help get us through those last 3 weeks and that final push, which you can do now, though. You don't have to wait until the event if you want. You can make a donation now at txvalues.org and invest in the work that we do on faith, family, and freedom. I mentioned I was in Lubbock last week. We had an incredible hearing yesterday on some major pro-life pieces of legislation. It was interesting, too, because, the University of Texas law school, it certainly appeared there were several law students from the University of Texas that were in opposition, which doesn't surprise me. Even though it's my alma mater, I know there are people there that viciously are pro-abortion and disagree with my pro-life views and the majority of the pro-life views in the state of Texas. So I wasn't surprised for there to be a few students there from UT Law School. But a few of them said, they just heard about it and they just got over there. I don't know who made them aware of it, who encouraged them to come, but it certainly seemed like there was some coordination going on with someone at University of Texas Law School. We'll see. But nonetheless, the interesting part of that, though, was none of them that I can remember cited one single court case in their testimony. Now, a couple of them said, well, this is unconstitutional, and the courts have said this. And I'm like, and I'm not, listen, I've been licensed to practice for 20 years. I know a lot of law, okay? But they say a lot of times that the most law, like, when you're studying for the bar exam or when you're about to graduate. And several of them said, they were about to graduate and all this stuff. And so none of them, though, cited one particular law. And I learned this when I was a 1L student, when I was in my first year of law school. Cite your source. So I was prepared when I came up there, and I wasn't trying to poke at them. I was trying to emphasize the point that if you're going to make an argument and try to take down a law, you better know what you're talking about. And if you're going to say the courts have said this, you better come with a citation, right? And I know that over experience, but I learned that in law school, right? And so, but part of the reality is they don't have a court case to cite to that supports their position. Not one that's relevant anymore, not one that's not been overturned and is a part of current law. So in my opinion, that's why they didn't actually cite to a case, because they don't have one to cite to that would back up their argument. But they do this a lot. And I say they, people that are on that side, that are pro-abortion, that oppose a lot of the other pieces of legislation we work on, they will just say the courts say this and unconstitutional. So I cited like 5 or 6 cases that were very clear that Senate Bill 33, and that was the one that, in particular that I was focusing on this particular issue of the court case background, is on very solid constitutional ground. And I took some pleasure in it, but a lot of it was reminding me that I have an important role. And I'm not just talking about myself. There are a lot of people there, but a lot of times I don't want to feel like I'm at a committee hearing just sort of, saying what someone else is going to say. I want to feel like, it was important and valuable for me to be there. Otherwise, I could be doing other things. And so, but I was reminded how important it is to have people like myself who, know the law, who can cite it, and who've got actual experience with it, right? 20 years of experience. I've worked on, hundreds of court cases and been involved in a U.S. Supreme Court case on behalf of someone who survived a late-term abortion, Gianna Jessen. So I know how important it is to be on the right side of these issues and for the law to be right and for these laws to be written the right way when we're trying to get them through the process. So it was an honor to be there with other members of our team and other great groups there, a lot of our friendly groups that were a part of protecting pro-life issues. Yesterday, some bills are moving. Conscious protection bill, Senate Bill 619, is moving. We're excited about that out of committee. Love to see some things happening in the House. I hear the House is meeting on Saturday, tomorrow. We'll see what that's all about. But nonetheless, listen, as we get into moving past the halfway point of the legislative session, it's hard for us to be out and about having events, raising money, and talking about that. Like, I got pulled away from some of that yesterday because I really needed to be at the Capitol. But we did hire 2 new people. Andrew Yeager in the Dallas-Fort Worth, North Texas area is our senior development manager up there. Look out for him. And also Lisa Achilles, who joined our team as our development director back in December. So we need your financial support. Go to our website, txvalues.org. Make that tax-deductible donation today. And that's how together we'll protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.